This is Natasha De Souza reporting for SALT Voices, and I'm here at the inaugural SALT Abu Dhabi with Omeed Malik, the founder of Farvahar Ventures based in New York. Good to have you here with us, Omeed.
It's great to be here.
Now, you've been attending SALT for a number of years, I hear.
I think almost 9 years now, yeah.
Almost as long as it's been around. I think this is the year they celebrate their 10th anniversary.
That's correct. So I missed the first one, but we've been a sponsor and a participant in a major way for 9 years now, going on 10, and of course this is the first one in Abu Dhabi.
So I wanted to ask you, how different is SALT in Abu Dhabi from the previous conferences you've attended?
Well, they're almost always in Las Vegas, with one exception. They did one in Singapore, which was pretty cool, but I don't think they've ever done a better one than this one here in Abu Dhabi.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really, really compelling to bring people from all over the world to this hub right in the Middle East here, because it really is the center of the world.
Have you been coming here often?
I have. For about 6 to 7 years, I've been coming to the Middle East region. In my former capacity as the head of the hedge fund business, I used to bring hedge fund managers across the region to raise capital. So I'm very familiar with the Gulf region and spending time here and doing business. And now in a different capacity as an entrepreneur myself, I have brought several American-based clients here for the first time.
Okay, tell me a little bit more about Farvahar Ventures.
Sure.
And the kinds of companies you work with.
Yeah, so Farvahar Partners is a merchant bank. What we do is we advise private businesses on M&A, advisory services, and we raise them capital.
Okay.
We are basically like a large bank for large public companies, but we are a boutique bank for smaller private companies. We only deal with private companies. And what we're doing is taking advantage of this explosion in pre-IPO private markets and the interest from all over the world into them.
Okay. That is a theme that's been coming up quite a bit today in my conversations.
Sure.
This interest in, I think, creating deal flow and access to family offices and high net worth individuals to pre-IPO opportunities. Why is there this uptick now? It seems to be something I'm hearing of pretty recently.
It seems that way, but it's not out of nowhere. This has been going on now for about 15 to 19 years for a variety of reasons. Some of them are macroeconomic, regulatory in nature. For one, you had Sarbanes-Oxley that made it hard to be a public company in 2002. Fast forward to 2012, we passed the Jobs Act in the United States. That meant that you have 4 times the amount of private investors than you could before. So instead of 500, now you can have 2,000. At the same time, you have interest rates that are very low, so people are looking for yield outside of the public market. And moreover, in 2001, you didn't have conferences in the Middle East. You didn't have people from Asia investing in all this stuff. So for geopolitical reasons too, now you have more money that's coming into this market.
Okay.
All of that stuff is allowing companies to stay private much longer.
Okay. Now, you're bringing some exciting companies with you here to SALT. Tell us more about them.
Well, one of the cool things about doing that is I think we have the only panel here of actual founders and CEOs. SALT's great because you meet some of the most talented money managers and allocators. But here we actually have on this panel tomorrow morning the only panel of operators, founders and CEOs of the businesses that they want to invest in themselves. So we have a company called Box, we have a company called Electric, we have a company called Splash That, and we have a company called Managed by Q. All of them are either B2B or B2C businesses that are either disrupting the workplace or the way that you consume your items.
So take us through a little bit. Give us a preview of what to expect in that
I don't want to give it all
today.
away because I want you to show up to the panel tomorrow. So I'll just give you a preview, okay?
I promise.
Okay, you
I'll
promise?
Be there. I'll be
no
there.
one else is listening here, right?
No.
Okay. All right. With Box, they are basically an online version of Costco meets Amazon.
Okay.
So you can order all your items in bulk the same way you do in Amazon, but in Amazon you're reliant more on one-off items. Electric is a software service, so you can outsource using software your IT needs for small to medium-sized businesses. Managed by Q handles all your vendor relationships for on the back office side. Think about toner, custodial services.
Okay.
They're taking that entire experience and making it easy through software for that kind of left behind position.
Okay.
Okay, and then finally Splash That. You have Salesforce and Amazon that use Splash That for all their event planning using their software. They could have built it themselves, but Splash That's so effective, they've hired them.
Okay. And what can we expect potentially from the discussion? Like, what are some, maybe 1 or 2 lessons you would love for the audience to glean from this, very high-profile group of actual business owners?
Being an entrepreneur and a founder today is completely different than it was, say, even 7 or 8 years ago. Now you better have a long-term plan because you're going to stay private a lot longer than you ever did before.
Okay.
So you have to understand the financing markets. It's not just enough to get a venture deal and then 3 years later you're going public. Now you're going to stay private a lot longer, so you better be a great steward of the business, have great ideas, and build a really fantastic culture.
Okay.
And of course, you've got to have a product that people care about.
Okay. And in your journey as an entrepreneur now, I think, what are some of the lessons that I think you've picked up along the way?
Well, this is now a newer entrepreneur. It's only been a couple years, and having worked I was a lawyer at a big law firm. I was a banker at a big place.
So you've worn many hats.
Yes, and I was in politics before that. So I've done a lot of different things. This is the first time, though, I've been an entrepreneur. And I'll tell you, it's very liberating. So it is the best part of my professional journey, but it's also the most difficult because there's no time that you actually turn off. It's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's probably the biggest thing I've learned, is that because it's about you. If you don't do work, then it's not going to happen.
True.
When you're getting a paycheck every 2 weeks, it's okay. You can
take
it.
It's going to show up in the bank.
That's right. So that's probably the biggest difference, I'd say. But it's been really fun, and we are in an area that is growing, and that's the best place you want to be.
Where do you see the Middle East featuring, in your work or factoring into your work at Farvahar Partners?
Well, I think for a variety of ways. Here, the most obvious one is like we're doing here, which is we're having CEOs of American-based companies come to the Middle East for the first time and potentially meet investors that want access to that market, like you were saying, at an earlier stage than many of the investors are typically used to seeing here because of that geographical disconnect. So that's the most obvious one. The second, though, is that there may be interesting opportunities for us to represent up-and-coming companies here or help investors here to get capital from North America or Europe.
Yeah, I was just going to come to that.
Yeah, yes. I think there's an interchange here that's happening, blurring of lines, and as we become more a globalized society, especially with respect to economics, you're going to have more of that exchange as opposed to one way rather than the other.
The one thing I'm left when we think about this, especially, because I know investors are always hungry for what gives us the best returns. They're also looking to invest in things that they're comfortable with. So depending on who presents these pre-IPO deals, you may have an investor approaching it with a certain level of comfort. At the same time, you have a number of homegrown, startups, business owners that are starved for capital because the playing field isn't level, right. For them. So a pre-IPO deal of some very sexy North American European company seems a lot more, attractive than investing in something that's homegrown, early stage, at the same stage.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, I think, for players like Farvahar, how might you be able to plug that gap?
Well, the government here is doing a great job because we spend a lot of time with them while we're here, and they're putting a huge point of emphasis into making sure that they're putting money and resources into those homegrown companies so that there really isn't a disadvantage. Because again, as you see when you look around here, they're only celebrating 48 years of existence as a sovereign nation. Whereas, the United States is like the next youngest is, almost 300 years. So I just think we can't really compare it apples to apples.
True.
They have made such tremendous strides in this region when you look around the Emirates that they're doing things that we're taking 20 years in 5. So I do believe that as the government gets more involved and they also foster a private market for people to be entrepreneurs and create that system, you're going to see them kind of jump to the next level. And I do think that's going to be very attractive for American investors who want to diversify their own holdings the same way that Middle Eastern investors might want to diverse theirs. So we will have that back and forth, no doubt about it.
Great speaking with you, Omeed. Thank
pleasure.
You so much for
Thank
taking
you very
the time.
much.
Good to have you with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.